Picture this. Your friend spent 45 minutes yesterday taking the perfect no makeup Monday selfie. She might have tried different angles, adjusted the lighting, wrote and rewrote the captions about embracing natural beauty, and when she finally posted it, the comments poured in. So brave, you're glowing, this is what real beauty looks like. But the whole thing was a production, carefully staged to look spontaneous. And everyone knows it, because we all do this. We spend hours crafting the perfect photo, composing and recomposing a casual tweet, and rehearsing the authentic moment. We are performing authenticity, and the performance has become so sophisticated that we have almost forgotten that we're performing at all. Welcome to the central paradox of modern life. The harder you try to be authentic online, the more you're actually performing. And the more aware you become of this paradox, the more you feel trapped. Because once you realize that being yourself on social media is just another role that you're playing, what happens to your actual self? Well, let's start with a framework that explains why this feels so weird. In 1956, long before Instagram or TikTok existed, sociologist Irving Goffman wrote a book called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. His central insight was that all of social interaction is easily theatrical performance. We are all actors on a stage, managing the impressions from others about us. But Goffman's framework distinguished between the front stage and the backstage. The front is where you perform for an audience, i.e., your job, your social gatherings, or just anywhere that you're being watched. You manage your appearance, your manner, and your setting because you're playing a role. But the backstage is where you drop the performance. It's where you might prepare for your role or step out of character, and it's more truthful and relaxing, where you can be messy and contradictory without worrying about your audience. The crucial thing about Goffman's model is that the backstage is essential. You need that space where the performance stops. You need somewhere to be yourself without managing impressions. Think about it in terms of your actual life before social media. At work, you were the front stage, professional, polished, playing the role of employee or manager or whatever position that you were in. But then you would come home, close the door, and go backstage. You could be tired and messy and wear sweatpants and just let your guard down. You could rehearse for tomorrow's presentation, complain about your coworkers, and process what happened without anyone watching. But the problem now is that social media has eliminated the backstage entirely. There is no going off stage because your life is constantly on display, being documented and available to an audience if you so choose. You wake up and you check your notifications. You photograph your breakfast and share your thoughts throughout the day, and curate stories from your evening. Even when you're alone, you are thinking about how you'll present what you are doing to your audience later. So the stage never goes dark, and the curtain never closes. And this creates something that researchers are calling the authenticity fatigue, literal exhaustion from the pressure to be genuine all the time. And studies show that young people are reporting actual tiredness, burnout, and mental exhaustion from trying to be real constantly. And the exhaustion is not just from performing, but from the specific kind of performance that we are now expected to deliver. Because in this age of curated life, authenticity itself has become the performance. Brands might tell you to be authentic, and influencers sell authentic content. But the directive to be real has become so constant that authenticity has turned into just another strategy, another brand, and another way to stand out in the endless scroll of curated lives. And just think about how bizarre this actually is. Being yourself has become something that you actually have to work at and strategize about. There are actual videos about how to be authentic on Instagram or 10 ways to show your authentic self. We have essentially turned being real into a skill that you can optimize. And this means that we are all supposed to share our authentic selves online. But what does that mean? You can't just post anything. You have to post things that get engagement, because you can't be boring or mundane, because that won't perform well for your audience. So you have to curate. You select the most interesting, attractive, and impressive version of your authentic self. You craft the caption that sounds spontaneous, but it took you 20 minutes to write. You stage the candid photo and rehearse the authentic moment. And then you tell yourself and everyone else that this is the real you. And researchers have found that people define online authenticity as minimal curation and sharing both the negative and positive experiences. But the same studies show that these people only share positive experiences themselves. They encourage others to share those negatives, but when describing their own behavior, they're only posting the highlights. There is a massive gap between what people say authenticity is and what they actually do. Because deep down, everyone knows that the negative stuff doesn't perform as well. Vulnerability has to be curated, and realness has to be a strategic realness. When being yourself becomes work, when authenticity requires effort and strategy and management, what exactly is left of your actual self? Because if you're always performing, even when you're performing authentically, where is the you that exists outside of the performance? And the truth is, we can all tell when someone is performing authenticity. We all recognize the too perfect photo, the carefully constructed vulnerability, and the strategic realness. That post about mental health awareness that's timed for maximum engagement. The unfiltered selfie that is definitely filtered. And the honest conversation that is obviously being rehearsed. We all know these performances when we see them, but we keep engaging with them anyway. Because we are trapped in a system where the only way to be visible is to perform. And the performance that works best right now is the performance of being authentic. And one influencer described it perfectly. Behind her stylish outfits and confident smiles, there was a constant anxiety, an endless chase for what to post next and how to make every moment picture perfect. For her followers, her life was their dream. But in reality, it was a carefully curated illusion that left her feeling empty and disconnected from her authentic self. She was exhausted from maintaining the self that she had on Instagram. And the brutal part is that the exhaustion is the price of admission. If you want to be seen, you have to put on a performance. Because to get the engagement, you have to have the curation. If you want to matter in digital spaces, which for many of us are the only spaces that we're interacting with, then you have to turn your life into content. And this is what researchers mean when they talk about social media fatigue. It's not necessarily being tired from scrolling too much, but that is a part of it. But it's also the deep mental and emotional exhaustion that comes from the constant pressure to be present and visible at all times. It's information overload combined with comparison fatigue, combined with the relentless pressure to maintain your online performance. And study after study after study shows that this is connected to anxiety, depression, decreased life satisfaction, and a general sense of just emptiness. So let's paint the full picture of what has happened. Goffman's framework assumed that performance was just one part of your life, that you go outside, you perform your role, and then you go backstage and you drop it. The performance was always temporary. The role was something that you put on and took off. But social media has collapsed this structure. Now, there is only the front stage that you are always on, and nowhere to go backstage, unless you are willing to stay back there. And not only that, but the role that you're performing is the role of being authentically yourself. So you can't even acknowledge that you're performing, because that would break the illusion. And this is the trap. You are exhausted from performing. But because the performance is supposed to be your authentic self, you can't admit that you're exhausted from it without admitting that your authentic self is actually a performance. You might be tired of curating your life, but you've told everyone that this is the real you. You might want to stop managing impressions, but impression management has become your primary mode of existing in digital spaces. We are all stuck in a loop where the only way out is to admit that we have been performing all along. But making that admission in itself is another performance. Now, some people try to solve this by performing authenticity even harder. Like, this is my real, raw, and unfiltered self. And then they still spend an hour crafting that raw moment into something shareable. They try to solve the problem of digital performance with more digital performance, seeking authenticity through increasingly sophisticated forms of curation. But this will never work, because the problem is not that you're not authentic enough, but that the authenticity and social media might be fundamentally incompatible. I mean, just think about how social media is. It's a platform designed for you to create content for an audience. And the moment that you create the content, you're making choices about what to include and what to not, thinking about how it'll be received and optimizing for engagement, even if you don't want to admit it. Because this isn't authentic self-expression, but strategic communication. And there's nothing wrong with strategic communication per se, but it's not being yourself. It's crafting a version of yourself for public consumption. Your most authentic self is probably the one that exists when your phone is dead and you're alone with your thoughts. The self that nobody ever sees, and one that doesn't need to be optimized or shared or validated by people on the internet. This messy, contradictory, boring, and uncertain person that exists in the quiet moments when there is no audience is the real you. And everything else is just performance to varying degrees. And maybe that's okay. Goffman was right that we have always performed in social situations. But maybe the problem is that we have forgotten that we're performing. We have confused the front stage character with our actual self and let the performance consume everything until there is no backstage left, no private self, and no parts of us that exist independently of the audience. Everything from personal romantic relationships to people raising their children is being put online for other people to consume. The camera is always there. And this is where we are right now, living in a world where the front stage has consumed everything, where authenticity has become just another performance, and the exhaustion of constant vulnerability and visibility is the price of participation. And it's really hard to talk about this all in one video. So next time, we're going to dig a little deeper into why this has happened and what it's doing to us psychologically. We'll look at how algorithms amplify conformity, how living aesthetically leads to a specific kind of despair, and why this whole system might be fundamentally incompatible with human flourishing. But for now, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all next time.